Current Affairs. This is Akashvani. In the weekly program Current Affairs, now we bring you a discussion on important debates and key bills in the Parliament this week. The participants are Ashok Tandon and Prasad, political analysts. Moderator is Teena, journalist.
Hello to all the listeners of Akashvani. My name is Teena. This week, both houses of Parliament took up discussions on two issues: 150th anniversary of the national song Vande Mataram and electoral reforms in the country. From rich tributes to Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's timeless composition to thoughtful suggestions on strengthening the world's largest democratic exercise, the discussions in both houses showcased Parliament at its deliberative best. We heard members cutting across party lines, sharing rich historical perspectives, emphasizing the unifying spirit of Vande Mataram and also the need to pass on not just the melody but the values reflected through Vande Mataram to our future generations. Also on electoral reforms, the interventions by members from different parties were quite wide-ranging. There were proposals to curb the role of money and muscle power, calls for cleaner and more accurate voter rolls, demands for greater transparency in political funding, stronger safeguards for the EVMs, and ideas to encourage higher participation of youth and women. Despite differing viewpoints, one clear message that emerged from the discussion on electoral reforms was the need to make India, the world's largest democracy, more robust, inclusive and future-ready. So we'll talk about the key highlights and some extraordinary moments from the two discussions in the House. We're joined by two guests to take this conversation forward. I'm pleased to welcome senior journalist Mr. Ashok Tandon and Mr. Prasad. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this conversation. You've both followed parliamentary discourse for decades, so we'll try and understand from you about how significant the discussions on both these themes were in both houses. But before that, let's listen in to what the Prime Minister said while initiating the debate in Lok Sabha, marking the 150th anniversary of the national song Vande Mataram.
आदरणीय अध्यक्ष जी, वंदे मातरम ने भारत को स्वावलंबन का रास्ता भी दिखाया। उस समय माचिस की डिबिया, मैच बॉक्स, वहां से लेकर के बड़े बड़े शिप, उस पर भी वंदे मातरम लिखने की परंपरा बनी और बाहरी कंपनियों को चुनौती देने का एक माध्यम बन गया, स्वदेशी का एक मंत्र बन गया। आजादी का मंत्र स्वदेशी के मंत्र की तरफ विस्तार होता गया। आदरणीय अध्यक्ष जी, मैं एक और घटना का जिक्र भी करना चाहता हूं। 1907 में जब वीओ चिदम्बरम पिल्लाई, उन्होंने स्वदेशी कंपनी का जहाज बना तो उस पर भी लिखा था वंदे मातरम।
So we've often spoken about the need for Parliament to discuss and deliberate more and not force disruption, Mr. Prasad. It was wonderful to see the Parliament come alive to discuss two important issues that are so significant to our democratic fabric. So let's begin with your thoughts on the debate on Vande Mataram, since you were there in both houses listening to the debate. Give us and our listeners a sense of some of the biggest moments, some of the biggest takeaways from the Vande Mataram debate in both houses.
Well, I think it's very appropriate because 150th anniversary of Vande Mataram, it's our national treasure, and all of us have grown up listening and singing that national song and heard it on many occasions, important occasions, including, in fact, every time when Parliament session ends, it ends on a note of rendition of Vande Mataram. Of course, we all heard the Indian history about the Vande Mataram. That is very important because, as I said, we all grew up listening to the song, singing that national song, but there are many facets to it which probably were not aware, which have been brought to public knowledge. And of course, there were contestations on those points too, and that's what debate and discussion is all about in Parliament. And the idea is that you have a healthy discussion. And for us, for those of us who have been watching Parliament for several decades, including my senior Mr. Ashok Tandon here, I think the best part of it was Parliament was back debating and discussing issues which were in public realm, talking about them and focusing on them. Of course, there were points when some people asked on the efficacy of the debate as to why the debate was necessary at all. But that's democracy. You have to question everything, and only informed citizenry can take an informed decision, Teena.
Absolutely. But I think on the importance of it, Mr. Tandon, I think as somebody from this generation, it's important in the manner that a lot of members spoke about the unifying power of Vande Mataram back when we were fighting the Britishers and sort of relating it to today's national consciousness. To us, that perhaps was the most important moment of why this debate happened. But for you, let's have your perspective first on what stood out as the most meaningful takeaway from the full days of conversation, the extensive discussions that happened on the 150th anniversary of Vande Mataram in both houses.
See, actually the debate on Vande Mataram was without any dispute because everybody agreed and everybody respected Vande Mataram, treasury benches as well as opposition benches also. But the discussion became a bit acrimonious when the Prime Minister referred to the letters written by Nehru to Subhash Chandra Bose and Gandhi and bringing in Jinnah and then saying that this Vande Mataram was curtailed at the instance of Jinnah and by Mr. Nehru himself. Now that led to acrimonious debate and then the opposition benches, particularly Jairam Ramesh, Manish Tiwari, Priyanka Gandhi, they all said the whole debate is basically to defame Jawaharlal Nehru. No, otherwise, by and large, all other opposition parties also spoke in favor of, because there is no dispute as far as Vande Mataram is concerned. But when the Prime Minister said that even Gandhi had practically agreed before independence that this song is so, has national, spirit and all that, is obviously can become the national anthem. But if we go into the debate in the Parliament Constituent Assembly, so this particular reference to Nehru, opposition started attacking that this was basically to defame Jawaharlal Nehru. Otherwise the debate was very smooth because every member who spoke, particularly from both the Treasury and the opposition, they had absolutely no issue with the Vande Mataram. They all said it is an accepted fact that Vande Mataram is a national song. So in that context now, as Prasad also said, that now it has completed 150 years. The tribute was also paid to Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. So therefore, I think it was a befitting occasion to mark that date. But unfortunately, the debate became acrimonious, and otherwise, I think it was a befitting tribute to Bankim Chandra Chatterjee and also to Vande Mataram, and India still feels proud of Vande Mataram. The whole country, as you very rightly said, it's a unifying force. It is a spirit which inculcates a sense of nationalism among youth, and therefore it is imperative that the younger generation and the future generation should also remember that we have Vande Mataram, which is a national song.
Certainly. Before we proceed to the next issue about the electoral reforms, one question, since both of you are seniors, you've seen the transformation that has happened in the country in the manner that we are now looking towards our Viksit Bharat goal. A song that was more than a melody. It was a movement. It was the unifying power that brought Indians together against our colonialists. Now in our pursuit for our Viksit Bharat vision, what are the values of Vande Mataram that we can pass on to future generations? This was something that a lot of members spoke about, why it's important to ensure that the future generations know about the fact that Vande Mataram is not just a song. It's so much more about which they really don't know about.
Yeah, I think, Teena, that's very appropriate. And as you mentioned, member after member, irrespective of which side of the aisle they were there, they spoke about the richness of the song, the melody of the song, and the kind of inspirational values it brought at a particular time when we were fighting the colonial powers. Having thrown off the colonial yoke, it now became a national song which continues to guide the country. The spirit, of course, is moved differently. Now we are unifying to move towards a developed nation. But that song and the value it inculcated among people, that remains intact, number one. Number two, the younger generation, remember there is nothing more important than the word of mouth. What you actually hear from your elders remains inscribed and instilled. It becomes actually etched in stone for you. It remains etched in your memory. You may have read in the textbooks, but we all forget textbooks soon after exams are over, probably, right? But that apart, the fact remains that when you hear it down from your elders, your family elders, you remember certain values, family traditions. This is the country's value and country's tradition. That is handed down, and this was a time to revisit it and remind the country, the whole concept, where it began, how it ended, and how it's moving forward.
So in that context, that the importance of Vande Mataram be told to our coming generations as well, Mr. Tandon, I'll take that question to you. Now we are at a moment when we once again need that kind of unity. Back then, Vande Mataram was propagated through different mediums. Now we've moved on and the youth of today engages through different mediums. It's digital, it's much more faster. It's not the word of mouth anymore. How do you think in this rapidly evolving digital era, we can still make Vande Mataram relevant and significant and once again a unifying power as we head towards our 2047 Viksit Bharat vision?
See, it is still relevant and it is still a unifying force, there is no doubt about it. But the fact remains that Vande Mataram is not being sung anywhere, not even in schools, not colleges, and only in Parliament when at the end of the session. So then it is the responsibility of the governments, state as well as centre and the education ministry that it needs to be, the spirit needs to be revived. Now why can't Vande Mataram be sung in schools? But then there is politics in it. As some opposition said, as if we go back into the history, irritates somebody. We don't want to sing praise for the Matrabhumi. Then the issue becomes political. Luckily, this session, it went so smooth. But the Prime Minister, when he mentioned that when Vande Mataram completed 100 years, the nation was changed by emergency. And at that time, the constitution was throttled and those who lived and died for patriotism were pushed behind bars. No, it was obviously message to the Congress that you have not been respecting Vande Mataram, you have not been respecting the Constitution of India, and when 100 years celebration was due, your government did not celebrate it. On the other hand, you imposed emergency. So this may not have been liked by some opposition leaders, but by and large, there is absolutely no 2 points, no discussion. The relevance of Vande Mataram, the importance of Vande Mataram, even in the present context, and even for the future generation. Now, how to inculcate that sense? Now it's up to those in power in states. Suppose if some state refuses to sing Vande Mataram, then you can imagine the debate will continue. But right now, as far as the parliament session is concerned, I think by and large, the debate on this issue was unanimously in support of Vande Mataram, and everybody felt that Vande Mataram is a treasure which we must honor and continue, and the future generation should also be told about its relevance. To that extent, I think the whole debate was on a very positive note.
Certainly, a rare sense of unanimity and shared respect, at least towards Vande Mataram, which today is one of the lasting emblems of our national identity. But the other issue of electoral reforms was where the sparks flew from both sides. Of course, it's remained a contentious issue, especially with the SIR underway in several states. But before we get you to talk about the electoral reforms and the kind of discussions that took place, let's listen in to Union Home Minister Amit Shah, who made a statement in the House, who participated in the debate as well. Let's listen into what he had to say.
गहन पुनर्निरीक्षण क्या है? एक गहन पुनर्निरीक्षण है कि जिनकी मृत्यु हो गई उनके नाम कट जाए, जो 18 साल से बड़े हो गए उनके नाम जोड़ जाए, जो किसी भी प्रकार से 2 जगह मतदाता है उनके नाम कट जाए, और जो विदेशी नागरिक है उनको चुन चुन कर डिलीट किया जाए.
So, Mr. Prasad, I'll once again get your remark first on the electoral reforms and the kind of discussions that took place. You've also witnessed many reform attempts in the manner in which the electoral exercise has been conducted in the country. What were some of the suggestions that you think are most timely in the manner in which the elections are conducted to make sure they're not just fair, but they're also transparent, and the credibility of elections in a country which is the world's largest democracy is upheld?
Well, I think it's very important that the Election Commission, we all know, does a commendable job of holding elections in this country right from 52, and it has taken several steps to make the system free, fair and transparent. But every time an election is held, there are issues that keep cropping up, whether people in the opposition in particular feel they have not had their fair run. And of course, there is a redressal mechanism system in place. I think a debate of this kind was necessary, but some suggestions did come forward. But a lot of focus was spent on the process of the intensive revision which is now currently underway. Probably the criticism was not so much about why SIR was necessary. That, of course, few people did raise a question. I think it was also focused on the manner it was done, in particular when it was held in Bihar. The time given in particular came up for review. Of course, there is time. I think the Election Commission did learn from what it did, and we all see the current SIR is underway. So there's nothing much to say on that. But electoral reforms, as I said, Tandon can correct me, but we have two very famous reports, one by Dinesh Goswami, who was the former law minister, and then of course the second was Indrajit Gupta committee report on electoral reforms, because everybody needs to understand how the system, and today we have moved to EVMs. A lot of members wanted ballot paper going back because they have doubts or whether the machine is manipulating. Now this is a doubt which has cropped up time and again. There are many people who are today in government in several states. Some of them have come to Election Commission in the past raising doubts about EVMs. So there are all kinds of opinion in a democracy. They do come to Election Commission, number one. So Election Commission is an umpire, a neutral player, so who has to give a fair and free ground to everybody, irrespective of the size of the party or the number of membership. It has a system. That being said, I think what is important is that a lot more could have been come in terms of discussion of reporting electoral reforms, which I think probably today one of the papers did editorial on that, saying that how it is important that the kind of time that Parliament invested in talking of electoral reforms could have thought about in a futuristic manner, moving from where we are.
That's true. I think that brings me to the EVM issue that Mr. Tandon, a lot of members spoke about. Diverse views from different political parties calling for stronger verification mechanisms to the ones that we are using today. How do you personally assess the safeguards that exist today, and what credible improvements do you think we need to make in order to make sure that the election procedure is seen as a trustworthy process, and nobody in the near future or going forward should raise questions on at least the authenticity and the credibility of the entire procedure?
First of all, this debate on SIR was sought by the opposition, and initially they were protesting, etc. But under a rule, the debate was agreed and the debate did take place. Although it was acrimonious, at times there were heated exchanges between the Union Home Minister Amit Shah and the opposition leader Rahul Gandhi over what Rahul Gandhi has been alleging, a vote chori claim. Now, he has not been able to in fact elaborate and corroborate his allegation what exactly vote chori means. Is it EVM? Is it SIR in Bihar? I think that's why the Home Minister a bit lost temper also and said that the Congress leadership has been raising these issues because of the poll losses. Whenever they lose election, they start talking about EVM or the voter list, and therefore I think the issue which you are now raising is really relevant. And there has been debate on electoral reforms going on at least for the last 3-4 decades. A lot of suggestions have come up. When we were in the ballot paper, there used to be booth capturing, violence. Then we introduced EVM. Then many people said even the developed countries don't have EVMs. Why should have EVM? Let's go back to booth. So fault were being found in EVM. Now suddenly the issue actually was raised for SIR. As we know, many opposition parties are not opposing SIR per se, but they say that because obvious issues, we may be losing our votes and vote bank. So I think the debate on electoral reform has been going on and it should continue also, but in a very proper perspective. The opposition also has not been able to put forward any credible alternative. Now, from booth to EVM, now we want to go back to booth, even then we will find fault with the booth also. Then what exactly is the whole world, the Western world has moved into voting pattern I have seen in the United States. They send you a ballot, you post it. There is a proxy voting also allowed. There was a debate in India earlier whether NRIs can be given a voting right. Now, these debates are very healthy in a parliamentary democracy, and therefore I am glad that debate took place in Parliament, although it was heated, but something must emerge out of such debate. No, there was no demand from the opposition that the government should constitute a high power committee or a parliamentary committee. No, they were simply blaming the election commission. Now, if you remember earlier, it used to be one-man election commission. Then 3 members. No, somebody suggested that, I think a very senior Congress leader said, it should be a 7-member. No, there is no end to it. Even when there was one-man election commission, there were no questions raised about the electoral system. I remember many stalwarts election commissioner had come. But opposition problem is that they want to find fault with the electoral system because, as I'm not saying, the Home Minister said, because of the losses they suffer, one after the other. If the particular part, what happens when Mamata Banerjee wins West Bengal? What happens when Congress wins Himachal, Karnataka? So that time, no questions are raised. But only when they lose, particularly the main Congress party, when they lose, no other party is crying foul about it. It's only the Congress party because of their defeat. So I think opposition parties, or for that matter all political parties, should realize that we are a parliamentary democracy and there has to be a ballot. Now, which is the best form of ballot, we can sit and discuss. But there is no third option. Electoral ballots, election ballots are introduced. They will find fault in that also.
Absolutely.
So where exactly we go from here? Just debating in parliament and then forgetting about it, preparing for the next election. So I think all parties will have to ponder over this issue. What exactly we need to strengthen our parliamentary democracy and our electoral system. Many countries in the world, developing countries in the world, they want our help. They invite our election commissioner, former election commissioner, to help them conduct parliamentary elections. So that means they have faith in our system, but we don't have faith in our own system. So what do we want? Simply going back to ballot box will not serve them. Having multi-member election commission will also not serve us. So therefore, I accept that the debate was healthy and such debate should continue, but for a very positive response and positive result. Not just for a debating thing, just to blame the government. Whosoever is in power will be blamed. I remember, Prasad, in good old days, when Jansangh lost, Balraj Madhok said, it's the Russian ink which has come. So it's not new now.
You're right, and because I think election reforms resurface in our national conversation because the manner in which our democracy is evolving, and so are the mechanisms through which we are conducting these elections. So we are updating ourselves
in fact,
with
Teena,
time.
just to add to what Tandon Saab said, interestingly, the proxy vote has been an issue. I think it was during Mr. Vajpayee's time, if you remember, sir, the service voters were given the option of, so what happened, the whole system was changed because service voters would get the ballot paper once it is ready, it will go to the distant place by post and then come back by post. Now they reversed it, they allow you to electronic transmission. So the parliament actually enacted a law. There was a parliamentary committee which went into it, talked about how service voters can be reached faster using the technology. So once the ballot paper is ready, the authorized returning officer transmits it electronically to a registered voter of the constituency in wherever he or she is posted, and they exercise and post it. So they have cut down one-way transmission time. So there is an electoral reform which we don't realize it, but it happened. So similarly, as Tandon Saab said, unless you move forward, discuss these practical issues, there is still no clarity on whether we should give vote to NRI community or not. Though it has been in talk for last 25 years. Have we seriously, and as the Prime Minister has always been now talking, which has been now a subject of parliamentary scrutiny, one nation, one election. Should we have it? Should we not have it? What are the plus and minus? The whole committee is going on.
Absolutely. Both of you are right that it's important to debate and deliberate in Parliament, and despite disagreements, it's important
but
to
also talk
have
of a way forward.
True. And we've seen even the debate that happened in both houses over the last 2 days, there were issues on which there was consensus. So for example, there is a near universal agreement on the need to curb candidates with criminal backgrounds. Yep. So this has been one issue that has been spoken about a lot, but very limited progress when it actually comes to the parties implementing.
Now that we have a law for 1/3 reservation for women coming up whenever it completes the delimitation and the whole process, people have been talking, why should not political parties themselves give tickets to 1/3? Why should they give tickets to people with criminal backgrounds? So this has been raised publicly many a time, but there is no reform that's happening which visible at times. So I think that's what
Mr. Tandon, what is your assessment? Because these are issues that are discussed each time we talk about election reforms, that you should try and curb candidates with criminal backgrounds, you should try and encourage more and more youngsters and women to come and be part of this system. But it all comes down to the winnability factor. In addition to these discussions on Vande Mataram, which marked 150 years this year, and the electoral reforms in the country, there were some important bills that were introduced and passed in both houses, about which we will try and understand more from Mr. Prasad. But before that, let's listen in to what the Finance Minister said about this important bill that was passed.
I rise to move that the bill to augment the resources for meeting expenditure on national security and for public health, and to levy a cess for the said purposes on the machines installed or other processes undertaken by which specified goods are manufactured or produced and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto as passed by the Lok Sabha to be taken into consideration.
So where do you see the main problem? Is it, solid legal ecosystem, or is it the lack of political will, or most importantly, the voters' choice wherein the political parties have to ultimately succumb?
No, political parties also have a role to play in this whole process, and not simply attacking each other on the voting system or even attacking the election commission. I think it is a futile exercise to blame and attack election commission on the eve of every election or after every election. As I said, third world countries, developing countries are having more faith in our election commission than our own political parties. Now, having said that, I think opposition parties should also meet among each other to discuss all these issues. Simply even granting 1/3 seats reservation for women, it may not serve purpose, because as the joke was, when the reservation was given in Panchayat, the husband of the Sarpanch used to say, I am Sarpanch Pati. No, he was wielding power. So therefore, I think this whole discussion of strengthening parliamentary democracy through electoral process is a continuous debate, and it should be in a very healthy atmosphere, not blaming each other or trying to fault with each other. So in this election of candidate, all parties then go back to casteism. So, and I will here blame a section of our media also. From the start of the election, our not only channels but newspapers also start calculating the caste arithmetic. Why do you do it? Then at the end of the day, they say, no, this time caste barriers have been broken. Women in Bihar overwhelmingly have voted in favor of Nitish Kumar. Where do you get these assessments? So I think collectively all of us, including the media, political parties, we have a say and we have a role, we have a responsibility. Because ultimate aim is to strengthen India's parliamentary democracy.
Absolutely. I think that's what we witnessed, that despite the confrontation, there was also constructive suggestion on how to make our electoral system more and more transparent, fair, and strengthen the democratic institutions. From that, as we wrap up the conversation, Mr. Prasad, we'll also touch upon some of the bills that were introduced in the House. So if you could take us through which important bills were introduced and passed in both houses of Parliament this week.
Yeah, I think the three most bills that came through this session in Parliament, in fact, two of them came up last week, which include the Manipur Goods and Service Tax, the second amendment, the Central Excise Amendment Bill, and of course one this week was the Health Security, National Security, which came up on the 8th in the Rajya Sabha, having been cleared in the Lok Sabha earlier. Now, this is an important bill because as the government decided that sin goods, as they call it, whether it is cigarette, smoke and tobacco products, should be taxed at a higher rate, because partly you had to readjust some of them had removed from in the GST category when there was a rationalization, some of the goods had to recalibrate it. So, and consider, with that was central excise, that was the amendment, and part of it came under the post GST. So you have now said, okay, we are going to rate, say, a 40% on tobacco products, and the funds that generated out of it will go towards building the national security apparatus, because we are talking of Sudarshan Chakra in the largest context of the country's security shield. So those were the things. There were debate on that too. In the sense, some members did ask, is this what you have come to, that you have to, fund from cigarettes or something like that? But that's a debate. That's fine.
Absolutely. So the focus this week in Parliament in both houses was on 150th anniversary of our national song, also on the electoral reforms, on the timeliness and the relevance of some of the reforms that we speak about in our electoral process. In addition to these two, there were some bills that Mr. Prasad took us through, which were introduced, and some of them were also passed with debate in the House. With that, we'll have to wrap up this conversation. Thank you once again, Mr. Tandon, Mr. Prasad, for joining in and sharing your thoughts with us and our listeners. Thank you to you listeners as well for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on important debates and key bills in the Parliament this week. The participants were Ashok Tandon and KV Prasad, political analysts. The moderator was Teena Jha, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsttalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 928-909-4044. Current Affairs.